From the courts now, former Minister of Petroleum Resources Diezani Alison-Madueke has been cleared of all 6 bribery charges brought against her by British prosecutors. Mrs. Alison-Madueke, who served as Nigeria's petroleum minister between 2010 and 2015 under former President Goodluck Jonathan, was acquitted of 5 counts of accepting bribes and 1 count of conspiracy to commit bribery. Prosecutors allege that Mrs. Alison-Madueke received huge benefits and enjoyed what they described as a life of luxury in London. Throughout the trial, the former minister maintains that she neither accepted bribes nor exercised direct control over the award of government contracts. After more than 46 hours of deliberations, jurors at Southwark Crown Court found her not guilty on all 6 counts. And now the former Minister of Petroleum Resources, Diezani Alison-Madueke, has reacted to her acquittal by a London court following charges of alleged bribery. Mrs. Alison-Madueke says she's excited by the verdict, as she, as well as her family and friends, have been traumatized for the past 11 years.
It's been a very, very arduous and long, almost 11 years. It's been traumatic for, not just for me, but for my family, for friends, for all those who have stayed and supported, for my 93-year-old mother in Port Harcourt, for my son, and for all those who love us, friends and family. Look, we're surrounded by friends here. You know. So it has been a hard journey, but I'll tell you this. God will always do as God wills, and God will be God. Amen. God is not a man. Amen. He should lie. So when he promises you something, he will see it through. Sure. It has been almost 11 years I've been here. I did my job to the best of my ability. But like I said, God is not a man.
For more on the acquittal of Diezani Alison-Madueke, law lecturer at the University of Hull in the UK, Dr. Misbah Lateef joins me on TVC News at 10. Dr. Lateef, a lot of people seem shocked with this outcome. Could you run us through what Mrs. Alison-Madueke's defense is to have been cleared of all 6 charges by a UK court?
Yeah, well, the first thing is to acknowledge that for Mrs. Alison-Madueke, you know, this verdict represents the end of a long and grueling, you know, torturous, if you like, 11 years or so, you know, walk to freedom regarding our liberty and restrictions, you know, in the UK. And you see, we need to remind ourselves that the prosecution system in the UK, you know, rely heavily on the burden of proof being on the prosecutor. In other words, it is the duty of prosecutor to prove that the accused or defendant is guilty of the offense as alleged. And even at that, the standard of proof is that the prosecution, again, we need to prove beyond reasonable doubt. So what has happened in this case, basically, you know, and this has also surprised me, is that the National Crime Agency and the Crown Prosecutor have failed woefully, unfortunately, you know, to prove their case. And I say unfortunately because the posture, you know, that we have seen so far is that the UK authorities, you know, proceeded with this case like, you know, they had some watertight or unassailable evidence against Mrs. Madueke. You know, this took 11 years or thereabout, 10 years actually, you know, for the National Crime Agency and even the CPC, that is the crime prosecutor, to actually investigate this case until they later brought it to court, you know, this January. So for taking all of these years and for the jury to still come up with a not guilty verdict across all the charges is actually a very great blow. Right. And that, again, as I said earlier, attests to the fact that the prosecutor has simply failed to prove their case.
But
so in other words, okay.
Yes, you know, we can go on and on with that. But if you look at judicial jurisprudence, do you foresee a possible appeal of this case? And can the Nigerian government be the one to file the appeal?
Well, actually, that's a very interesting question, because in the UK, this is actually the end of the road, you know, for the prosecution, and I say this with all sense of authority. In the UK, you know, criminal justice system, I mean, the jury system that they operate. Once a jury has returned a verdict of not guilty like this, the prosecution does not have, right to appeal. You don't appeal against a finding of fact. As a matter of fact, it's almost impossible. But then I should clarify that there is a narrow ground, and that is the only ground. If, for example, the prosecutor will claim that the jury was physically tampered with, or that the jury was, corrupted, and that is almost, impossible. So again, this is actually the end of the road for the prosecution, and this is why I said earlier that it is a great blow, for the National Crime Agency and even the prosecutor. I mean, they spent 11 years doing all of this, and then it came to this conclusion for them. So professionally, this is very surprising for me as well, and not because I actually have a preferred outcome, for the defendant. So yeah, basically, there is no right of appeal in this case. There is no right. And what Nigeria can learn from this, basically, well, this does not affect anything in Nigeria. I should also clarify that. The cases in Nigeria is a sovereign country with our independent judiciary and even criminal prosecution system. So whatever has happened in the UK today does not in any way vitiate or undermine or affect whatever proceeding is going against Mrs. Madueke in Nigeria. So those two cases are independent of each other.
But what is the lesson in this case, bearing in mind that it's been more of media trial that has put her in bad light? Can this judgment, do you think, I mean, in your perspective now, change that perspective?
Well, the issue of whether, what we call a media trial sometimes, for me, can actually be people just trying to, I would say, how do I clarify it? You expect the media to report, just as you are doing now, and I don't necessarily want to regard that as media trial. Yes, when you have celebrities on trial like this, the media will normally swoop on that. So, but what Nigeria can learn from this, for me, basically, is that, well, we've seen a case in the UK that has failed despite, 11 years effort of the... So, but then, like I said, the Nigerian court have already forfeited some of the properties, and because the case in Nigeria is independent of the case in the UK, except for the perception which you have mentioned, I do not see this in any way affect the cases in Nigeria. And of course, the prosecutor in Nigeria will also have to prove their case beyond reasonable doubt. Otherwise, we also go the same way as we have seen in the UK.
Law lecturer at the University of Hull, the UK, Dr. Misbah Lateef, thank you so much for your insights at this time.
My pleasure. Thank you too.